You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 230 of the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. Today, we're heading to Wiltshire to meet arable and beef farmer Ben Cooper. Ben farms 800 acres alongside his brother and father in the Pewsey Vale of Wiltshire, growing wheat, barley, oats, and canary seed, as well as producing hay and straw. As well as the cattle and the crops, Ben has helped the family diversify into pick your own pumpkins and Christmas trees. And he also works off farm, carrying out agricultural market research for clients across the ag industry, which we'll hear about today as well. I didn't know this before we started, but you're also a teaching fellow at the University of Reading. I did not know that. Anyway, Ben, welcome to Meet the Farmers. How are you doing?
Thanks. Good afternoon. Yeah, all good. I like to keep busy. I like to keep busy, Ben.
Yeah, that is for sure. Don't know how you have time for all this. How wet's Wiltshire been, first of all, so far this winter?
Yes, I mean it's the first topic of conversation of any farmer, right? Talk about the weather.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it's been pretty wet. We've not had it as bad as some places. We tried to do a TB test 2 weeks ago, and the yard we were TB testing was flooded. So
Oh,
that
blimey.
was a bit of fun. But no, not too bad. We just had that couple of about a week or so of frost, which really helped. We managed to get some winter wheat drilled in that, but we're now back to square one with I believe it's Storm. Is it Aisha? Storm Aisha we've just had.
Yeah, I can't keep up with them all now. I don't know about you. I think it might have been
No,
that one.
it's the record. I think it's a record number of storms ever this winter. It's just
Yep.
crazy, but it was pretty noisy last night. The dog was barking away downstairs, went downstairs and he was not very happy, barking away at the window and trying to explain to a dog in dog language that it's just a storm. It doesn't really you have to take him outside and he's like, "Oh, this is a bit weird. What's this?" But no, in answer to your question, weather's been a bit challenging, but I think every year at the moment it's you've got some extremes of new weather.
Yeah, it is, and it's just your guess is as good as mine as to whether we sort of hit May and then all of a sudden, yeah, it doesn't rain then for 6 months again, which who knows could happen. No one knows. Tell us a little bit more about your bit of Wiltshire. I don't think I really know the Pewsey Vale. Tell me more.
Yeah, so you should. It's a beautiful place to come. We've got sort of everything here. We've got canals, rivers, rolling hills. But where my farm's situated, I'm actually between, if you know it, the Marlborough Downs and the Salisbury Plain. On one side of us, you've got the Savernake Forest and the beautiful town of Marlborough, and then on the other side is just going up to the Salisbury Plain. So you've got the sort of the army going bang, bang, bang every sort of other day. But it's a really nice area. It's all in AONB, which means Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, which is a great place to live, but sometimes quite difficult to farm in, just because of different restrictions and things. But we can talk about that later. But yeah, it's if you haven't been, it's definitely it should be on your list.
So I gave your farm a little introduction earlier, but yeah, just let's turn to that. Tell us a little bit more about it, perhaps its history, but also what you're doing now, the rotation, soils, etc.
Yeah, so it's quite a traditional mixed arable and beef farm. We've got quite a bit of permanent pasture that has been grass, I don't know, for the last 600, 700 years. So it's all sort of triple SI, chalk downland. When I say triple SI, I mean it stands for, I believe, a site of specific scientific interest or something along those sort of lines. So it's very limited what we can do with that apart from graze it. It's very pretty. Some of it's got some streams going through it and all sorts of wildflowers, etc. And then on the other side, we've got the arable. The arable kind of split across three different soil types. We've got sandy land or sand land in the valley down the bottom. And then we've got some really heavy, quite productive clay going up the banks. And then when you get up, as I said, to the Salisbury Plain, our land up there is all sort of chalk based. Still good soil, but it's quite easy compared to the heavy clay. And yeah, and the farm's been in the family for a long time. I've grown up here as well. It's all I know really. It's my
Yeah,
life.
yeah. So you're the sixth generation, aren't you?
Yeah, so six generations here, but I believe it's something crazy like eight or nine generations for farming in Wiltshire.
Wow.
So yeah, my family actually before they bought this farm, farmed up on the Salisbury Plain. But then the army, I don't know how much you know about your military history, but the army decided to turn the Salisbury Plain into their private playground back in sort of the late 1700s, I think. And they compulsory purchased the farm off my family, so we had to move. So that was but we're talking hundreds of years ago.
Wow. But you've still been, yeah, it's still pretty much local. Haven't really moved far.
Well, it's worse than that. My partner actually is from the place my family come from before we were here. So
Really?
hopefully we're not related. Otherwise that would be a problem, wouldn't
What about I mean you mentioned some of the challenges of where you are, but I mean especially you've got a mix of soil types there. So I mean what might the benefit of that be as well?
Yeah, from a mixed farming perspective, it's quite a nice farm or a nice thing to have really, because the different soil types have different qualities. The sand obviously is a lot more hungry, but also needs, additions like lime, whereas the chalk at the top, you never need to lime that because it's chalk based, right? But yeah, we can grow a variety of crops pretty well. And the reason for the varied soil types is, as I was saying about, the part of the country that I'm in, we've got those valleys and then the big banks and up onto the plain. So you do get that sort of variation. But it's also quite typical of farms around where I live. What I mean by that is years ago when they were divided up, or when the big estates, the big landed estates got sold off, farms tended to have a bit of land in the valley, bit of land on the banks, and then some land up on top to give them that sort of mix. Because don't forget, a long time ago, a lot of farms or most farms were mixed farms rather than purely arable. So they you needed that sort of mix. And actually around here still many farms are mixed. We're not quite down in the deep dark West Country where you ask people what they do and they say cows or sheep. Here we do have cows, sheep, and some crops, but also we're not like the East where you ask them what they do and they say we grow wheat. Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting, nice. So it's yeah, there still are quite a lot of mixed farming going on.
Yeah. Keeps life interesting. What about you? Were you one of those kids who grew up sort of, I always want a farm, or did you sort of look across the hedge and think, might go somewhere else, or
Yeah, it's a really good point. With perspective, I think I see it differently to how I saw it when I was little. So that's probably not a very helpful comment, but I'll explain it. When I was small, as long as I can remember, I was always on the farm. My father, I wouldn't call it child labor, but any farmers listening to this will know what I mean. You just do it, don't you? You just what's you get to the end of school and people go, oh, I'm going on my summer holiday to France or even to Cornwall or Australia or whatever, and then you go, yeah, I'm going to go and sit in the tractor for the next 2 months and see you again after that, and you just don't you don't see your friends for the summer period, but that's just life, and that's farming. But to answer your question, when I was young, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I thought everyone grew up on farms. You live a sheltered life when you live in a farming village. You walk out your door, you walk where you want. You just go on the farm. So as a child, all I really knew was, yeah, you get up, you go and feed cows every morning, you work hard, and that's it. But as I got older, I think, I did have dreams of doing all sorts of things. I think everyone does, but farming is who I am. Even when I was, a young teenager, uh, you go away from the farm, you still think about it, and I do have quite a lot of other interests as well as the farm that keeps me occupied. And that's always been the case. I like to leave the village if I can once in a while. Probably not as much as I should, but
it's important.
it is. The world is much bigger than I live in a place called Eastern Royal, and the world is much bigger than Eastern Royal. And yeah, so I don't know. I've just always, yeah, always been a farmer, I suppose. I would say it's a generational thing as well. A lot of people of my generation do more than just, they've just been on the farm their whole life. My father is a really good farmer, or I think he's a really good farmer, but his whole life's been farming, and
Yeah.
that's how it is. I think that's changing a little bit now, maybe.
Yeah. And with that in mind, I mean, tell us a little bit more about your other business, which you've been involved in this area for quite a while. But yeah, so it's market research sort of based in the ag industry. But tell us a little bit more about this, yeah, in terms of what you do, who you work with.
Yeah, so it sounds complicated, but it's no different to any sort of industry or market in the whole world. Every industry, every market, there's market research conducted. So, for example, what does Ben Eagle think about the latest podcast? That could be a market research project in
Wouldn't
itself.
anyone like to know?
Well, exactly, exactly. So basically, I when I finished uni, started working for a regional and then a global market research agency, all focusing in agriculture. I was doing that alongside the farm as well. So that was kind of the crux. I wouldn't sign the dotted line to work for them unless they told me or gave me permission to still work like a slave over harvest on the farm and do all the farming as well. And actually, they were really good to me, and they understood that because they wanted people who are actively farming. Because if you're actively farming and you're doing research on farming, the two help. So I mainly work for sort of big multinational companies like Bayer, BASF, Syngenta, Corteva, people like that. And it's not just ag chem; it can be seed or fertilizer. But I also have done work for more sort of regional or local companies, some sort of agronomy distributors, rural shows, things like that. And the sort of market research that I do is mainly qualitative. Now that's always a big word. When I was little, I had no idea what people were saying when they said qualitative and
Yeah.
quantitative. You think
Tell
stop,
us
just
more.
stop.
What do you mean by that?
Exactly, exactly. But basically, it's people rather than numbers. There's two types of research. There's numbers research, which is 50%. When you see polls, for example, Rishi Sunak is liked by 5% of people or whatever. That's
It's generous.
quantitative. Yeah, exactly. Whereas what I do is more qualitative, which is people. So it's all about why, how, who, what. So emotions, feelings, what people think about this, why they do that. It's more deep dive stuff. And yeah, I've done that alongside the farm for the last few years. I left that the global company I just mentioned because, well, two reasons really. One, trying to do that job plus my farm with my father was just driving me mad. I just couldn't
Yeah,
work.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I just couldn't work seven. I didn't mind working 7 days a week through the summer and spring, but I just didn't want to work 7 days a week all year round.
No.
So yeah, so I just that was the main driving force.
That's called being a dairy farmer.
Yeah, yeah, this is true. This is true. And there's a reason I don't have dairy cows on the farm. But yeah, I just decided to try and go my own way and make my own market research company, which is yeah, hopefully going quite well. Touch wood, and it gives me more flexibility alongside the farm, so I can control my time a bit better. And also, as you asked me that question, did I always want to be a farmer? Well, God knows when I was young, but it is, it's my life. I can imagine not being involved with the farm now. And yeah, hopefully I'm trying to set my life up or have got my life set up that allows me to both be on the farm and also pursue my wider interests because even with a mixed farm, in winter there is less to do. It's just the truth. Like, it's, unless you're a dairy farmer, there is a lot less to do in winter. And you've got a few choices when you're a farmer in winter. You can either choose to make no money and just sit there and get depressed. I know that's really, really boring and it's probably a bit of a generalization. Or you can actually do something with your winter. And a lot of farmers quite rightly go skiing or they go
Of
shooting.
course.
Or some people just go to work and carry on working. And there's always things to do on a farm in winter. Don't get me wrong. Think of that storm Aisha. We had 4 trees come down last night. So you can spend your time chopping trees. You can spend your time servicing tractors. But let's be honest, that's not my skill set. My brother is far better at doing things like that. So let him crack on with servicing tractors and doing whatever he wants to do. And yeah, I just use the winter time a bit more productively for my own work. But don't get me wrong, I still do like skiing and shooting. I just haven't had much time to do it.
So yeah, just on this sort of market research stuff, I mean, what kind of questions are you asking? Obviously, it's quite broad, and you've been going for quite a while, so I'm guessing you've done quite a lot of different projects. But yeah, what are you interested in with farmers, and what kind of responses do you get?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it all depends on what the client has commissioned me to do. So quite often the stuff I do is sort of new product development. I'm actually doing a project 2 minutes before I was speaking to you today. I was working on a new product development, like product testing, basically, where it's a new herbicide. I won't say too much more than that. The new herbicide coming out to the
Probably best
to
not.
the market. Yeah, coming to the market in the UK. And we've been doing a bit of product testing with the sort of farmer or the target market for that product. So it really depends on what the client commissions me to do. But a lot of the work I do is sort of like what we're doing right now: conversations with farmers, focus
Yeah.
groups, in-depth interviews. Sometimes can be physically on farm, looking at products or looking at machinery or whatever. And sometimes can be like we're doing right now over Teams, over Zoom, you name it, I do it.
Yeah, and I'm guessing. Well, I mean, I know this for a fact because actually, when we spoke on the phone the other day, you've been up to Scotland for about 2 hours, and then you come back down again. So you're on the
Yeah,
road quite a bit as well.
yeah. So basically, you know what it's like if you're on a farm, you can't get away for too long. So yeah, went to Scotland for a day, right the way up. Did the focus group, drove back, and then yeah, when you and I spoke, I was back on the farm making the most of the frosty weather to crack on with field work because that's been the only opportunity we've had to actually get out in the fields and do something, right? This morning I was driving up the hill to go. We outwinter some cattle on our hill, and I was telling you about that chalkland. There's one massive benefit of the chalkland being able to outwinter cattle up there. So I was trying to get up there this morning with the truck, and just could not get up the hill. It was just spinning, just for that weather we had last night. But a few days ago on the frost, you could just get around anywhere you want, do what you want.
And then there's that other bit with your time that you do as well. Apart from, yeah, and I'm sure there's other stuff as well. But I mean, you're a teaching fellow at Reading Uni. What's
Yeah,
this all about?
yeah, good question. I got no idea. Just happened really. Yeah, I do a bit of sort of teaching and research at the University of Reading. They're a great agricultural department actually. The Reading Uni. What I like about Reading Uni is it's an ag uni, but it's not really because they've got so many. Ag is such a small part of what Reading
Yeah.
does. So what I liked about Reading is I actually went to Reading. It's a bit biased, but
Oh,
you
okay.
go yeah, yeah. And I chose Reading for two reasons. One, Ben, which is pretty obvious, is it's pretty close to where I live,
Well,
so I
yes.
could get back. Yeah, so I could get back to the farm evenings, weekends to do farming. And the second reason I chose Reading was I didn't want to go to an ag college where everyone spoke like me, had the same interests. I wanted to actually spend time and meet friends and people who weren't farmers because, yeah, as I said earlier, the world is so much bigger than just Eastern Royal. It's also bigger than the agricultural industry. And go back to my point, Reading is a good uni. The agriculture department are good, and yeah, I do a bit of sort of lecturing for them. But the stuff I tend to do for Reading mainly focuses around one module. And what we do with that module, when I say module, that's like a teaching module. The students come down to the farm, I give them the problem, and then they have to act as basically ag consultants and solve the problem for me. And I
Okay.
basically, so I'll give you an example. The problem or the project I gave them last year was setting up or expanding my pick your own pumpkin enterprise on the farm. The year before that was changing the tillage system. The year before that was I was putting up a new grain store, so it was around the grain store. And the year before that was actually converting, basically got like a redundant farmyard. What to do with it? Still haven't done anything with it yet, but yeah, that was that. So it's those sorts of things, and then there's more sort of an ag business management module that I get engaged with. I do a bit of sort of ad hoc stuff with some of them, just from a sort of practical farming perspective. But yeah, keeps me busy.
This episode is being supported by our primary sponsor, Howden Rural, which is the new name for A Plan Rural. The Howden team shares my passion for giving a voice to farmers, and we are both driven to raise the profile of farming voices to a wider audience. Howden Rural do a lot of work on social media themselves, sharing farming accounts and farming stories. They have a rural community blog which shares farmers' experiences, and they also support a growing number of initiatives that champion UK farmers, including this podcast. So a big thank you to Howden Rural for supporting Meet the Farmers. Let's move on to wider industry stuff. Challenges, there are plenty ahead. What for you sticks out as being perhaps one of the biggest challenges that we face, and perhaps if you can frame it into what the opportunity is as a result, or what the solution might be, what might that be as well?
Yeah, there's a couple, but just from the real practical farming basis, the weather, climate change, you see climate change in the news every day, but farmers actually at the forefront of not the problem, but facing the changes that are causing. So, I don't know about you, Ben, but even just in I'm not that old. I might look it with these wrinkles, but I'm not that old.
Not at all, Ben.
And basically, my point is that even in my lifetime, I think a lot has changed in terms of the weather. I'm sure when I was little, seasons were more set. You had a winter, you had a spring and autumn. Now we get we get cold weather, we get warm weather, we get rain in summer, we get rain in winter. It just seems that the extremes are more extreme, and the seasons aren't so set. So I think farming doesn't matter if you're arable, beef, sheep, alternative crops, veg, whatever. It's harder. It's not as easy potentially as it might have been when the weather was a bit more set, especially with the sort of wet winters we're dealing with. So that's a huge challenge. But there's also positives to that. I mean, with the weather changing, it does mean that some industries will actually have more opportunity. Look at English wine, right? That wouldn't be a thing 40 years ago. Um,
Absolutely.
so there are different things you can look at, but from a selfish sort of arable and beef perspective, yeah, the weather's pretty challenging. Look at the last couple of years. We've had, like you said, stupid heat, then we've had stupid rain, then we've had no rain, and it just goes from one extreme to the other. So you know you're dealing with the elements, you're dealing with nature, you're dealing with the weather, with farming, but that brings its own difficulties, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so on your farm going forwards, how do you think are you able to adapt your practice, adapt your rotation, etc. For that, with that in
Yeah,
mind?
I'm going to buy a boat and just go around in a boat. Be a lot easier.
Fish farming. Here, that's the
Yeah, yeah.
future.
Well, fish and
Fish
rice
farming
because
in Wiltshire. We are.
yeah, yeah, and rice, flooded fields with rice. Yeah, indeed. No, just to be on a serious note, yeah, I think everyone's thinking how they can adapt their rotations and what they're doing with the farm and how the weather's facing it or affecting it. I mean, I'm not massively changing anything, or we're not massively changing anything we're doing in terms of the crops we're growing now and that, but it just affects, how and when you can get on with field cultivations. What it does affect a bit what you're planting because for example. I think I mentioned, I might have, but we just put some winter wheat in that frost last week. Well, if that frost hadn't happened, we wouldn't have got that in, and we'd had to put spring crop in. But the problem is, I don't know how aware you are, Ben, but there just isn't any spring seed around. It's a huge problem for arable farmers this year. There just isn't any around, and what is around, the germination is rubbish on. So that's not ideal. So, what would we have done? Okay, we've had to, think about what crop we're going to put in there. We wouldn't put maize in because we're not a big dairy farm, so we don't need that maize. Yeah, it's just all these little knock-on things, and the weather affects all those things. There's other challenges, right? There's the price inflation problems. So I don't know if you went to any of the machinery shows recently. We just had obviously Lamo. I didn't go because I was
Yeah.
working, but there's a combine there which costs over £1 million, right? Where are you going to find that sort of money from? I mean,
Absolutely.
there's people. It's huge money. It's big lottery figures. Things are getting more and more expensive. Inputs. Okay, they've dragged back a little bit this year compared to what they were last year, but thank God because we're looking at wheat at 160 sort of pound a ton rather than £300 a ton,
Hmm.
and that sort of variation isn't good for anyone. It is scary with sort of price inflations and the fact that you don't know what or how much you're going to get for your wheat unless you're locking it in a forward contract. But if you're doing that, what happens if the price suddenly goes up? Because whilst £180 a ton right now might look pretty good, but in reality, when you look at your profit margin, it's not great, is it? It needs to be back up to where the levels were last year, especially with the sort of prices you're paying for your inputs, and even labour. People need to be paid a reasonable wage, but agriculture needs to be able to sustain those wages. Well, how can you sustain those wages when crop prices are 100 and 180 pound a ton, or 100, even 160 or whatever? Same thing with livestock and dairy, right? You need to have a sensible price. So that's a huge sort of challenge that's facing the global ag industry rather than just the UK. But then you can flip that on the positive. I think a lot of businesses have actually become more resilient, or they've had to become more resilient because things like BPS are basic payments scheme stopping, and farmers want to farm effectively, but it's just finding that balance between farming efficiently, effectively, helping and looking after the environment, and also just having a sustainable business. And it's not easy. So loads of challenges, but also loads of opportunity in agriculture, right? I think it's a beautiful industry to be in. The countryside is a marvelous place because farmers keep it so. So it's just it's trying to create a sustainable business in an economic pressure situation, and also dealing with, as I said, the fun of the weather.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love that positivity coming through, regardless. And I think probably one of that one of those things to think about, isn't it, as well, for any non-farmers listening, is that farming is it's a long-term game, and you can't look at it really on a year by year basis.
No,
Otherwise, to be honest, a lot of years you would
well,
just give up if you were doing it like that. But if
it's
you look at it over averages of 5 to 10 years, then you do have those balances out.
this is really, really important. It's a really easy way to think about farming in terms of economics. The last 2 years, so the year before was our best ever year for profit. Prices
Yeah.
were crazy, right? The year that's just finished, as in the harvest year 2023 that's just finished, is our worst ever year for profit. So we've
Yep.
gone through 2 years, one being sky high and the other being rock bottom. Okay, thank God that's happened because the rock bottom one has now made the other one or has held up the worst year. But you don't want too many rock bottom years before you think, oh God, this is really not good,
Yeah.
especially with us subsidies and everything else ending. But you're right, it is a long-term game. My family have been here for 6 generations, and it'd be a real shame if it was my generation that stopped it. I have no intention. Even if I decided to stop farming, I wouldn't want to sell the farm. We're very lucky we own our farm. Obviously, a lot of people don't. And that's not because of me. That's because of years and years and years ago. But we are very lucky. But my point is, farming is a long game, and the people or family farms in particular, like us who've been here a long time, I don't want that story to end with me. And it's just how do you keep going and create a sustainable family business? I wouldn't say we're a huge farm, not in terms of arable, but hopefully we have a sustainable business, and hopefully. I'll bring my kids up on the farm and then they can moan at me for making them work all the time. And the cycle goes on and on and on. But it's, as I said, it's a nice place to be. It's just always thinking, how can you make this sustainable?
Yeah. And on that, and you have already mentioned, there's a lot of change going on at the moment, a lot of policy change. And of course, by end of 2027, we will have lost, well, we were changed really away from basic payment scheme, which is where a significant chunk of a lot of farmers' income comes from. How is your business faring in terms of mitigating against that and planning for a post BPS world?
Yeah, well, look, it's probably not a very popular opinion, but if you're not making profit before BPS, then you probably don't want to be farming. And a lot of people struggle to make a profit before BPS, not because of their own hard work, but because of the scenario they're in. Imagine if you're just on a hill farm, doesn't matter if you're in Wales, Scotland, England, wherever, and you're limited in options to sell stuff directly to the public. You're limited in options in terms of what you can put in cropping. So you're not stuck, but you're doing your sheep or your beef or whatever really well, as efficiently as you can. You are a really good farmer, but you're limited in what you can do, and you're limited in the money you can make. That's a hard situation to be in. And those sort of people, they need subsidy, they need schemes to be able to keep their almost their farming community going. So my generalization that you should be making a profit before BPS doesn't apply to everyone. But my simple point is that as a sustainable family farming business, you need to be making a profit before BPS. And luckily, we are, but the BPS going will make a significant, well, already has made a significant dent in our profit margin. And that BPS money allows the farm to reinvest in machinery and to and actually be sustainable, and it helps sort out those peaks and troughs that we were just talking about. But we have started to do things to mitigate it. Not only do we have sort of, as I said, agri-environmental schemes that we're part of, so there are new subsidies coming in. Well, I shouldn't call them subsidies because it's the wrong word. The schemes to incentivize farmers to farm in a certain way, but because we're not an intensive farm, we're doing a lot of that already anyway. So we were doing it before the government have come out with these incentive schemes. For example, we've been cover cropping way before actually we're going to get paid for it. And even though we've applied for SFI, which is Sustainable Farming Incentive, we still haven't had it come through yet. So we're putting cover crops in anyway. So a lot of these things we're doing, but I think it will, it naturally will affect us like it affects everyone. We're also, as I said, we've started up the pick your own pumpkins as a bit of a alternative income, and that's making not a huge profit, but a nice little profit to add back into the pile. So it's all about, for me, for a family farm of our size, it's very hard to get more land. So it's not about getting more land to increase your turnover, increase your profit, because that doesn't always work. It's very hard to get land around here. For me, it's about having more eggs in different baskets. So the beef brings in money. Property rentals bring in a bit of money. The arable brings in a bit of money. Small shoot brings in a little bit of money. The pumpkins bring in a little bit of money, and so on and so on. Because I think that helps the peaks and troughs, and helps make a sustainable business. But as I can't sit here and plead poverty. My dad's done a great job of building a sustainable farming business. But it does worry me, even a farm of our size, which is not tiny but not huge. How do I make that sustainable for the entirety of my life and for my family's life? So, yeah, it's a scary thing post subsidy, but again, I think we've got to be positive about it. It's you should just got to think how can we make a sustainable business? And you almost have to. I know it's a horrible thing, but you've got to forget what the government are doing a bit because, in my opinion, the way the government are handling the agricultural transition or the agricultural community or agricultural policy is somewhere between, and I won't swear, but rubbish and very rubbish. You can choose which swear word to insert there yourself.
Yeah, I think yeah, generally that's very well put. Another aspect, and I suppose this is turning to another part of the market, and the arable sector is definitely implicated in this. And I'm particularly interested in this with perhaps the farmers who you speak to with your market research hat on. And I don't know how often this comes up, but of course it is RT Red Tractor. This has been a lot in the farming news. It seems to be non-stop in the farming news. I know over the last year, calls for change of leadership, for example, et cetera, et cetera. Red Tractor, from your point of view, in terms of the positives and the negatives, because there are both.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
on your sort of balanced view on it.
yeah. I think that's the key word there, then balance, right? I think we're quite lucky in this country to have red tractor. A lot of countries don't have it. The equivalent if you go to a lot of different countries, the insurance schemes are almost the cooperatives setting the rules for the farmers because a lot of farmers in different countries sell into cooperatives. Um, whereas red tractor is sort of an industry standard. More and more, the public hopefully are getting aware of it. And I think red tractor are genuinely trying to get the public more aware of the red tractor stamp. And I just think we're quite lucky. So as a principle, as an idea, as a thing, red tract is great. But with everything on a national level, it's hard to manage it, right? So I think there are problems with it. I mean, I don't want to go into great detail because I'm not the world's expert, but I think yeah, as you quite rightly said, there's been a lot of stuff in the press which is probably quite true, and there are issues with red tractor, and it is frustrating. Doesn't matter what, if you're farming beef, or you're farming sheep, or you're farming or farming crops, it is challenging. But again, I think we're reasonably lucky to have red tractor. I just wish we as an agriculture industry could do more to promote almost how much we do in this country and why red tractor is important and what it actually means to the consumer. I think that's the crux for me. I mean, that's slightly different to what you're asking me because you're asking me about what do I think about red traction, how it works. Well, yeah, that's a minefield of answers there. But I think, yeah, for me, it's a good thing. Yes, it's got nuts and bolts that probably are falling off and need picking up and screwing back on. But yeah, for me, the real thing is anything that gets the consumer to understand what we as British farmers are doing and why it's important is a good thing. Because I know it's slightly off topic, Ben, but something I'm really passionate about, and that's partly why I got involved with Just Farmers, and we talk about what Just Farmers
Yep.
is in a minute. But I think farming has a great story to tell, and unless you grew up on a farm or you've got friends who are farmers, what reason do you have to be connected to your food? Most people don't grow their own vegetables anymore. Most people's connection with food is go to a restaurant or go to the supermarket and buy it. And that's massively changed in my lifetime. Even the amount of bakeries or local butchers shops and things like that that would give you a bit more of a connection to your food have gone. And people, I'm as guilty as anyone. I went to Tesco's last night. There are other supermarkets available, Waitrose or whatever you want. But I went to Tesco's last night to go and get all the bits and bobs, like you always do. You go in there and it's just easy. You look and you think, oh, that's cheap. I might buy that. And you pick it up and you think, oh God, actually I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna get the slightly more expensive chicken because of X, Y, or Z. Again, I'm not gonna go. I could go on for hours about that. But my point is, people are quite disconnected with farming and food, and anything we can do to help that is good. And thus, in my opinion, red tractor is a good thing.
Yeah. And Red Tractor aside, just from your business, I'd just be interested if you could give listeners an idea of the number of it or the kinds of inspections that you have on farm as well. in
Yep.
terms of number, what these people, what these assessors are doing when they're on the farm. As an arable farmer, and I know you're a mixed enterprise, but specifically on the arable here, I suppose, what are they actually checking for?
Yeah, so red tractor covers obviously both livestock and crops, but from the arable side, it's a variety of things. It's obviously your spray records, making sure everything is up to date, making sure what you say you've done on paper you actually have done in reality, checking your sort of grain storage. They come around and physically inspect and look at different parts of the farm. But it's yeah, so I mean there is a physical on-farm inspection as well as obviously just the more record-keeping side of it. But in my opinion, I think having physical on-farm inspections where they come out and they go through not only your records but want to wander around the farm, engage with you, look at your grain storage, look at your machinery. On the livestock side, again, look at where your livestock are, how that's all being done. It's important, and as long as the key for me really is that actually when they're doing those inspections, that they're being consistent with their standards so that you know where you are as a farmer. You know what is expected of you. And all farmers, I don't know, I don't know any of my friends who farm that I would say aren't good farmers. No one's out there going, oh, I can't be asked for that. I'm not going to do this. Well, there might be, right? There's got to be somewhere someone who's like that. But what I'm getting at is, everyone I know who farms, I would put my hand up or put my hand on my heart and go, they're good farmers. They're trying to do the right thing. But trying to do the right thing is different to meeting a standard. So all farmers need to know what that standard is. So that's the one thing that I would say about Red Tractor actually, just before we finish that, is that yeah, it's just helpful to know what's expected because most people are excelling that. I don't know many people that will be below most of the Red Tractor standards. And if they are, they probably should be. Well, Red Tractor will be doing something about it. But it's just that consistency, and it's hard, right? Because these inspections are done by real people, and real people have different opinions and different standards, etc. So there is that part of Red Tractor which is hard, but I think that just gets, I don't know, maybe easier as the Red Tractor staff have been there longer, maybe easier as the farm understands it more, etc. But I wouldn't personally say we've ever had a problem, to be honest.
You've already mentioned Just Farmers, and I want to turn to that. You were on Just Farmers last year. This is Anna Jones Communications Project. We've got a couple more workshops, I think, lined up for this year. Another two groups of farmers coming through. But yeah, tell us about your experience of Just Farmers in terms of what it is, what it's given you, and I suppose why you want to. You've already mentioned talking about telling the farming story, your farming story. Why is that important for you?
Yeah, so put really simply, Just Farmers is a great charity organization that is basically about giving farmers the skills to tell their story and engage with the media and the public about what they're doing on their farms, not just through social media, but through mainstream media, even things like what we're doing right now, Ben, podcasts, right? And it's a
Absolutely.
great thing for every farmer really to want to get engaged with. The reason I got engaged with it is because I think giving farmers media training is a great thing, and I learned so much doing it, and I just think it's a really good it's just a really good organization. It's giving farmers the skills to tell their story, and actually, it's not just about saying oh how great we are and how great farming is. It's actually it goes back to more core roots than that for me, and that is what I mentioned earlier. If people's only engagement with farming is going to the supermarket, that's a pretty sad state for society to be in. So the more we can do to engage people and engage with farmers and farming, the better. You're always going to have people who say, farming's the worst thing for the environment, farming's the worst thing for this reason, that reason. That's fine. That's their opinion. You won't change those people. But I think 95% of the public, if you give them a chance to engage with farming, food, just soil, earth, anything, outside nature, blah, 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 goes on. They want to do it and they love it.
That's super, and I think you've hit you've hit the nail on the head of partly what this is all about, and it's the fact we're all on the same side. We all eat food, and yeah, people are engaged. Yeah, we are a busier and busier country. There are more and more people in the country. There are more people getting out into the countryside, which is great. But rather than make an enemy of them, invite them in and yeah, tell them what you're doing and engage with them, and yeah, that can only be a positive thing.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of just farmers, right? Because a lot of farmers are, don't get me wrong, not every farmer is great at speaking to the public. Why would they be? Because they spend their life in a rural community on their farm where they don't have to engage with the public.
Exactly.
So, that's again a really good thing about just farmers. I'd like to think I'm reasonably good at speaking with people,
I reckon
but
so.
but a lot of farmers aren't, and that's fine because it's hard, and I think that's a lot of farmers get bad press for maybe being, I don't know, I don't want to say grumpy or not able to speak to the public, but I actually think most farmers are really nice people, really friendly, interesting. They've all got a great story to tell. So the more we can do to engage people with all types of farmers is great. Um, but don't get me wrong, on the flip side, I don't expect every farmer to open up a pick your own pumpkin or to do whatever. They don't have to do that. They can do whatever they want. But I think just every little step that any farmer can do to engage one person a day who might not know something about farming but might be interested, then great. Doesn't matter what you do, just it all helps, doesn't it?
Meet the Farmers is brought to you by RuralPod Media, the only podcast production agency to specialize in the rural sector. We're on a mission to make rural stories mainstream and help businesses, organizations, and communities like you tell your story through podcasting. Podcasting is a fantastic way of connecting with your audience, whoever that might be, getting your message out there and networking with leaders in your niche. RuralPod Media can help you by launching your new podcast or helping you with the technical side. We also provide podcast training and an audit service if you already have a podcast. You're not sure where to take it to next. For more information or to book a call, visit ruralpodmedia.co.uk. That's ruralpodmedia.co.uk. Long-standing listeners will probably already know about Just Farmers, but if you are new to the podcast, you can check out their website, which is justfarmers.org, or just check them out on socials and give them a follow. And please support what Anna, Emily, and the rest of the team are doing because it's a really good thing. And I mean, I personally love being part of it as well. I'm really looking forward to next year's workshops. And I should also say, just for Ben, when I do the podcasting workshops for Just Farmers, and Ben and his group came up with, I think, there's a brilliant podcast which has not yet been made, which I'm going to pressurize him to actually make at some point now, called Farming Cock-Ups. Listeners, if you want this podcast to be made, please get in touch. We'll try and
Yeah,
make it happen.
there's a guy called Gwyndath who was on in our group at Just Farmers.
Yeah,
Shout out to him.
he's been on Meet the Farmers actually. He was on last
Has
year.
he?
Yeah.
Oh, he's a great guy. He likes a beer too, which helps. And he's a lovely chap. And him and I were just chatting away whilst we were doing this workshop with Ben, just about the fact that in your daily life, again, it doesn't matter if you're a farmer or if you're in marketing or if you're in, if you're a chef, any occupation, everyone has cock-ups. Everyone has things that go wrong, and just in life, just in general. But in farming, sometimes you can have small cock-ups and sometimes you can have big cock-ups. And we Ben gave us the challenge of in the workshop of creating a podcast, and Anna, Gwyneth, and I came up with the idea of a podcast called Farming Cock-Ups, and it quite literally was us just talking rubbish. Again, I didn't swear, did I? That was clever, Ben. I almost did. Talking rubbish about just farming cock-ups and things that have gone wrong. So yeah, it's good fun, and it would genuinely be a good podcast. And I think actually it just makes a bit of fun out of the fact that things go wrong. And farming can be very lonely, but also two quite stressful job. And if you can just make some light-hearted fun of it, it makes it easier, doesn't it? Sorry, Ben, we've lost you. You've gone.
We back
Oh, you're
again?
back. Is it?
Yeah. Well, I was just saying, we were talking about farming cock-ups. You could not have had that in a better time. Podcasting cock-ups definitely happen. And I just
That's
had
amazing.
literally as soon as you were talking about that, just a thing came up on Zoom saying your microphone is not working. Like,
It's
great.
it's literally it's because you mentioned farming cock-ups, everything goes wrong, Ben. I thought I was going to have to do the whole thing by myself. I was like, well, the limit, I was going to start talking about my dog and then what I was going to have for dinner. And I don't know what I was going to do. But
We are back. We're back. Just quickly, we're going to start to round it up. But before, just the future of your farm, sort of. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, your dad is clearly made, built on generations, and you've got a good foundation for a business. Yes, there are lots of changes happening, but I'm guessing the nuts and bolts of the business you're not going to be changing much. You've got your Christmas trees, you've got your picker and pumpkins now, so you're doing some sort of direct engagement, and you're a very busy guy clearly, and I'm hoping you also have other things going on as well. Yeah, but apart from all that, future of the farm. Are you going to be doing anything else, or is it going to be business as usual, do you reckon?
Yeah, the key is don't cock it up, right, Ben? Yeah, that's the plan. But
You're
no,
fine
yeah,
now.
obviously,
Just keep it going.
yeah, obviously keep the nest egg going, which is the arable and the beef. I'd love to massively increase our beef numbers. We're quite extensive, so I wouldn't say we're an intensive beef farm. We're using a lot of permanent pasture grazing. Our cows live the life, Ben. Honestly, if I could come back as one of our cows, I think you'd be winning. It's just a nice place to be, our farm, really, when it comes comes to the cattle. But yeah, I'd like to grow the cattle. It's not something my dad's very keen on. We've got a sustainable number at the moment, and we would need more grazing, etc., to be able to do it. But yeah, grow the cattle. Keep trying to grow our sort of the amount of properties you rent out. It's nice stable income. Yeah, it's hard to do because you need to make money to be able to buy houses. But that's the aim of the game. But yeah, for me, I can't lie to you and say I have a 35-year farm plan. I probably should, but I think it's very hard to do that. And we'll see what happens. I have started doing things I said, like the pick your own pumpkins, growing Christmas trees, engaging more with the public directly. But also I've got my own business alongside the farm. If that keeps growing sustainably, then I can look to employ people for that, which would give me more time to be on the farm as my father starts to do less. But my dad's not that old, and he's very capable as well. And I can't see, unless somehow we can kick him out, I can't see him going anywhere. So, and I wouldn't want him to. It's his life. Yeah, maybe ask me that question again in 5 years' time, and I might have a clearer idea. But yeah, keep the status quo, but just keep trying to grow on it, and do the right thing in terms of if something's working, do more of it. If it's not working, don't do more of it. But yeah, I'd be lying, Ben, if I said I can't ever had like a pure concrete plan for it.
Yeah. I might well hold you to that. We'll have you on in another 5 years, assuming Meet the Farmers is still going then. Um,
Yeah, and I haven't cocked it up. That's the other thing.
just a little more about our primary sponsor, Howden Rural, which is the new name for A Plan Rural. Same people, different name. Howden Rural provide bespoke insurance cover for farms and estates. This could be for anything from tractors and machinery to a new exciting diversification venture. So for more information, visit howdeninsurance.co.uk/rural. We're going to move to the quick questions. These are a bit of fun. First is, if you could travel anywhere in the world, anywhere at all, where would it be and why?
Ah, such a hard question. Travel anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose right now, skiing. I haven't gone skiing since before COVID, partly for two reasons. One, because of COVID, and three reasons. One, COVID. Two, I've been really busy. And three, my partner, Katie, uh, great person, can't ski. That's just, what is she doing? And honestly, it's the source of all our arguments, but we won't go into that. So yeah, if I could literally travel anywhere, I don't care, Ben. Take me to ski resort. I mean, I was looking at social media and Folly Bloody Douche. If you know what Folly Douche is, it's like a massive party place in France for skiing. That came up on my my Instagram stream, and I was just like, oh my God, just get me there.
Well,
So I don't
if you're
know.
looking for someone to join you, honestly, hit me up because yeah, I'm longing for a ski holiday as well.
Right, Ben, let's just do it. We'll make a podcast about skiing. Forget the farming. This has been fun, but let's get skiing. Oh yeah, seriously, yeah. Travel anywhere, I don't care where. Ski resort somewhere.
Next one. If you could have any job in the world that wasn't farming and isn't running your business as well, what would it be and why?
I honestly don't know. I've
Oh,
never.
come on.
I know. I'll give you an answer. I'll think, but well, actually, no. I've got one. It's not a
Okay.
realistic job. It's not a realistic job. It's me. It's me in my dream world. Here with my trophy. But I love motorsport and I love driving and racing. So yeah, I think being a Formula One driver would be pretty
You'd be
cool,
an
right?
F1 driver. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I
I know
like
that's a
that.
very childish. I know that's a very childish answer, but it's the truth. I mean, that would be the life. Go Formula One driving, do a bit of farming in your spare time, and go skiing. That's what we got to work towards. There's my farm future plan. What's my
There we
future plan?
are.
Yeah,
There we
that's it.
are.
That's it.
Perfect. F1, farming and skiing. Perfect.
Yeah.
And maybe this relates to it. Your superpower, if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Oh, if I could teleport, I'm really, really, I like to be efficient. I like to get a lot of
Yeah,
stuff done. Imagine if you could just teleport everywhere. That'd be amazing. Just boom, and you're where you need to be.
I
And
agree.
then that would solve my problem because I could go skiing right now because I could teleport there and get back and feed the cows. All done.
I think that needs to go in the plan as well, Ben. I
Yeah,
think,
I'll work on that.
work on that as well. You've got a lot to do.
Yeah.
The final questions, Ben Cooper, your message for the public, any message, what would it be?
Yeah, I think we covered it. We've spoken about, well, maybe I've spoken about it too much. Engage with farming. If you can, get out there, in the countryside, go and understand, what's going on. I'd be impressed if most people, the general public, can look over a hedge and tell me what crop's growing in it. Just engage. Go and learn something. Simple as that, really.
Yeah, great. And I know it's a way off, but yeah, Open Farm Sunday is coming, guys. Check out
Absolutely.
openfarmsunday.org and you'll have a long list of farms local to you where you can go and visit. And Ben, your message to farmers.
Yeah, I think the key message to farmers at the moment is we're in winter and everything's a bit dark and you're working hard, you're getting cold and wet. But sunny days are coming again. And I actually, Ben, I don't mind telling you, I suffer with my mental health like everyone else does. Especially when you're in farming, I think mental health we haven't touched on it, but it's a key thing. The most quick message for farmers is just try and be positive because there are so many positives in farming.
Yeah, that's a really important one. And finally, your recommendation for a blog, podcast, or social media account to follow, which can be farming, but it doesn't need to be farming.
Well, I'd personally say this one, but hopefully the people listening to this already know
Ah,
that.
I hope so.
But yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But to be honest, that's a really hard one actually. My recommendation for, I suppose, for social media is so personal. And what I mean by that is you say, well, why is it personal? Because actually, what you follow or what you watch is what you're interested in, right? So the way I use social media is really to, see what my friends are doing. Wish I was skiing, as I said earlier about Folly Douche. And I mean, I don't know. I'd say just if you want to, engage with blog, podcasts, or social media accounts, whatever it is, think about the interests you really have and go with that. I mean, I do listen to some farming podcasts, but when I'm out and about, when I'm on the farm or when I'm at home, I listen to a lot of Formula One podcasts. F1 Beyond the Grid by Tom Clarkson. I think that's a great podcast. He's a good presenter. You and him actually sound reasonably similar as well. You got that nice sort of
Oh,
calm voice.
I'll take that as a
Uh,
compliment. Thank
you
you.
should, you should, you should. And yeah, that's a great podcast.
Brilliant. I think it's a great answer. Thanks for that, Ben. That's it. We'll leave it there. Thank you for doing this. Yeah, we covered a huge amount of ground there, but no, that was great. Thank you so much for coming on Meet the Farmers.
No, had a great time. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Yeah, that is it for today. A huge thank you to my guest, Ben Cooper, for coming on the show. Thank you very much for listening, as always. Our primary podcast sponsor this week was Howden Rural Insurance. Thanks to them for supporting the show. Any extra information is in the show notes. Next time, we'll be heading to Wales to meet Hugh Folks. Don't forget to check out our sister show, Rural Business Focus, where you can find that wherever you listen to this show. I'll be back with you on Meet the Farmers next week, but for now, I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you'll have a great week.